Welcome to Lawyers Who Learn, where we explore how attorneys' engagement and lifelong learning fuels their growth. Join us to uncover these journeys and gain insights for your legal career.
Eric Kanefsky, I'm smiling ear to ear.
I thought you were gonna make me smile.
Thanks for joining Lawyers Who Learn. Me and you were college roommates freshman year at GW, and I'm honored to have you on the show to talk about your career and what you've learned, because you have done a lot of amazing things, and we'll go through that. And now you're running a really high-powered law firm and doing even more interesting things that we'll learn about today. But I always thought it's just so cool. Like, I was watching some of your videos, or the video I found, and it's just so weird. And it's one thing when you're talking to somebody live, when you watch a video, you're like, wow, that's the person I knew in freshman year in college, and now they're like an adult, but you still see them like the same way you're probably seeing me now. You still see them as that person, which is awesome, because most people don't see that. They see you as the hard charging prosecutor and white collar defense attorney. So again, thanks for joining this podcast.
It's awesome. It's awesome because I'm happy to do this. And also, obviously, for all the reasons you just said, it's great to catch up. And I think we have also the unique attribute that both of us happened to marry the girls who we were with basically when we were like 19 or 20. And I think it's because when you talk to people who you knew 25 years ago at this point, or your wife for that matter, in your mind, you're still that age, right? Like you're like permanently etched in your mind. I don't think of myself as however old I am or however old you are, because I know you from a time when, frankly, we were kids, like when we knew our wives. So in any event, this is cool. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, there's plenty of stories from that. But what the two things I would say, and for me, it's actually, to be honest, I just lost when you were talking, I lost my complete train of thought. I was like, I had a really great thing. And then I'm just like, I'm back to this. So let's do this.
Sure.
So we went to school at GW in 99. Oh, that's what I was going to say. Most importantly, and really appreciative, because we never talked, your firm has been a Lawline unlimited customer for your entire firm for a long time now.
And by the way, this is a ringing endorsement, not for nothing. None of that is because, my buddy runs this great company that does. It is truly, and I could pull in 25 other attorneys who are sitting down the hall from me. Everybody just absolutely, not only do they love it, but it is actively used. Everyone relies on it, particularly this day and age. And the content's great. Like, it really is. And every year, we literally just did this because now that I run a business too, we're doing our year-end reconciliation, going through all our yearly expenses, figuring out hey, do we still use this, stuff like that? And Lawline has never been on the chopping block of those things, because the utility that we get for the cost basically is such a good value proposition for us. And you probably appreciate it because we're doing this virtually. Nowadays, nobody wants to go to do the CLEs and do that all the thing. The ability to just throw it up on your computer or put it on your phone is amazing. So congrats on that. It's really awesome.
I truly appreciate that. We have a team who really cares about educating attorneys and creating a great product. I might afterwards, if possible, put you in touch with some people on the team to, at minimum, share what you've said, but also get any feedback. But let's get into it. So I'm going to read your bio real quick, and then we'll dive into your career. 99, we graduate at George Washington University. It says 2002, you graduated Temple. I wasn't sure if that was right, but let's say 2002, 2003.
Yeah, it's 2002. Yeah, that's right.
So then you were in private practice in, BigLaw or in private firms for 2002 to 2008, 2008 to 2011. You switch careers. You become an assistant U.S. District Attorney, which normally is the thing you would do first, not after private practice. 2012, 2013, you eventually become appointed director of the New Jersey Division of Consumer Affairs, managing 600 people. And then in 2014, you formed the firm. Is it Kanefsky and Kanefsky, who he also was the director of consumer affairs in New Jersey, I think either before or after you. So quite a career. And I guess the first thing I would say to you is, I'm thinking back to law school. My dad always wanted me to back to college, always wanted to be be an attorney. It was the last thing I wanted to do. So I didn't actually realize it was for me until 2003. So that was 5 years after I graduated. I don't remember you talking about law school in college. Was that?
Yeah, that was it. I think I had the benefit of not having any lawyers in my family and not really truly having any comprehension about what it meant to be a lawyer at all, other than what on TV, the guy in the courtroom. And as you can attest, I always had a big mouth. But I actually went into undergrad with full intention of pretty much doing exactly what I did. I was a criminal justice major at GW, which really there's not a whole lot you can do with that. I was always interested in government. I had a couple internships in college at the Washington District of Columbia. At the time, they called it Corporation Counsel, but it was essentially the prosecutor's office during college. And I worked for a professor there who was the head of the criminal justice agency. So
It's funny
that's
because as a communication major with Tamar, I don't think I focused on that component of your side. So I didn't realize that was you were that directed. And I will say this, not to blow smoke up, you were and probably still are one of the smartest guys in the room. And
I appreciate that.
It came across from your humor and your ability to rag on people, but just ability to understand a conversation.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, but so I was always that. And look, I will talk about my career because there's some interesting parallels on what now, like you always dissect at this age, you start thinking about like, how did I end up doing this? A lot of people just end up following a career path, but I've had the opportunity to like self-analyze it a little bit, and I'm happy to share that with you, how I've ended up here. Yeah,
just go there right now.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So the upshot of my career is I went to I started my career, I went to Temple University because I got a scholarship there, frankly, to law school that virtually covered all my expenses. So it was a no-brainer for me. And it's a #1 trial advocacy program basically in the country. At the time, as I'm Philadelphia born and bred through and through, I had every intention of staying there. And so all the stars aligned. I started law school there. I got a clerkship, a summer internship at a firm called Ballard Spahr, which is a extremely prominent, predominantly a Democrat-heavy a powerhouse in the city of Philadelphia with a very renowned white-collar defense practice. The reason that's relevant is because actually then I ended up going to a firm in New York City when I got engaged to my wife, who was she's also a lawyer at a large firm in New York City. But I never really scratched the itch of what I wanted to do, which was be a prosecutor. I had the opportunity out of law school, like you said, when many people do. I got an offer to go to the Philadelphia DA's office. I made a decision largely driven by economics, right? Because these big firms pay so much money, they lure you in. At the time, the market was so hot for new lawyers. It's changed over time, but they were paying salaries that, frankly, were probably disproportionate to what the worth was of the people coming out of law school. And so I ended up going to the big firm route and went to Ballard Spahr, but basically was working for former federal prosecutors at the time. Then I went to New York City and was working for former federal prosecutors too, in a firm I was at in New York City for 5 or 6 years or so. But I always wanted to do that. But those are tough jobs, particularly at the federal level, to be an assistant U.S. attorney. Those are tougher jobs to get. They don't hire people right out of school. You have to have not only experience, but you have to have the right connections to refer you in to even just get the opportunity to get those jobs. It just so happened when I was in New York City, I was working for my boss at the time, who was formerly a federal prosecutor in New Jersey, who worked very closely with Chris Christie, who ended up being the U.S. attorney for the state of New Jersey. And that's how I ended up getting an interview and going through that whole process and ended up in the U.S. attorney's office. People generally think like crime's very black and white. Crime is the furthest thing from black and white, okay? Particularly in what we do, which is like white collar regulatory defense. The law and regulations, particularly governmental regulations, are so gray, right? And we're seeing that now because this is not political, right? But we have a new administration who's overseeing the federal government right now, okay? They have a dramatically different interpretation of so many laws and regulations. And we're seeing it real time. It's the shift between literally a couple months ago, what might have constituted a crime and what literally today constitutes a crime is really in the eye of the beholder. In this case, who's running the federal government or various states. And very few clients, and legitimately very few clients are like, even once they get charged with a crime, or even once they find themselves facing down the barrel of some regulatory enforcement action, very few of them really are like, oh, yes, I clearly was intending to commit a crime, and I can't believe I got caught. I would say 9 out of 10 of them are like, what I did was completely,
I had no clue
yeah,
that this was even a thing, and now I have this lawsuit against me, and there's two issues, right? One, it's not cheap to hire you or any other firm to defend that,
100%. Yeah.
and so just to defend themselves where they think they're innocent, multiple six figures or millions,
Oh, all day. Yep.
and then there's the other side where there's fines or jail, which
Yep.
it's and you are just like, what just happened here? I'm assuming
that is, and it's really for most people, again, and we're talking about very sophisticated people. It's a real process, like to really even understand how they found themselves or how they are finding themselves in these type of and in the type of situation you just described. And again, and that's why I say it's not black and white. It truly isn't. There are obviously black and white crimes.
Sure,
you walk into a bank, you rob a bank, everybody knows
you're doing tax fraud or something to that degree.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. But for the most part, in my world, my current world, those aren't the types of cases that we're dealing with, and those aren't the types of clients we, for the most part, deal with.
Do you know who Ben Brofman is?
I know Ben very well. Yeah.
Okay. So obviously that's more criminal than white collar, but we had him.
Yep.
We interviewed him a while back, and he used to do a lot of programs for us. And he said that a large percentage of what he deals with people in the worst state of their lives and their worst moment.
Yep.
And a lot of what he does is he's a therapist. He's dealing with that. I'm wondering if you feel the same way.
I think it's spot on. Yeah, I think it's spot on.
But it's very hard for him. It was hard. Like you took it home with him.
It's very hard. It's emotionally taxing. And I've debated for myself, because some defense attorneys, just generally speaking, will say you can't be that emotional about every single case. You can't be that emotional about every win or loss, because you'll beat yourself up inside. And particularly some of the more seasoned ones would even say that maybe you're more effective if you don't get that emotional. I think it's who you are, right? I tend to be a more emotional person, and I feel like bringing that emotion or feeling that makes me a better attorney. Some would say no, but I think you can't try to fake it either. If you have it, you got to utilize it. If you don't have it, that doesn't mean you're not going to be less effective somehow. But
how many attorneys do you have at your firm?
We have 25 attorneys, and virtually all of them are. The nice thing about our firm is virtually all of them are former federal and state prosecutors, or they were in government in some capacity. And most of them were former colleagues of ours, either from the New Jersey AG's office or from the U.S. Attorney's office.
A 25-person firm is, even though it's a small firm, most firms are under 10 people. It's 90% of firms. And then there's the BigLaw. And 25-person firm is a significant size business to manage in addition to practicing law. Who do you have, or either you or your partner, like the operations attorney who's actually not taking on cases and managing the firm, or how does that work? And then I want to step back to 2014 when you decided to start the firm, but I just want to understand that.
Sure. I would say I'm the managing partner of the firm. My partner we're pretty good at sharing responsibilities equally, but just on the business side of it, I tend to manage those aspects of it, the financial, the economics, operational side of it. We made a great decision. God, I want to say once we got, I think it was probably towards 10 attorneys. This just shows you how connections in life, it all ties together. The first year associate who was sitting next to me at Ballard Spar, who was a brilliant attorney in her own right. We started at the same time on the same day, and our offices were right next to each other. And then right next to me was the chairman of the firm at the time. Okay. And so we formed a bond because we all shared a secretary, the chairman of the firm, and then Kathy and I. So Kathy, Georgetown law alum, a Notre Dame undergrad alum, really smart attorney, but ended up having kids like many women and going through a different career path where she didn't want to be living the big firm law life and the time it takes. And so we reconnected because she moved up to North Jersey from the Philadelphia area. And I was at a time where we were struggling to run the firm because we were 8, 9, 10 attorneys, and the business aspect, like you said, starts to take over. And she's somebody who has a lot of legal acumen, but what you need to run a law firm, right? It's very hard to be a non-attorney running a law firm because so many aspects of running the business relate to law. Long story short, I said to her, hey, can you just give me like, my kids they were young, but now they're not young, and I'm looking to get back into it. I think I first solicited her to come work for us because she's that smart and talented. But ultimately, I enlisted her to do our marketing, to put out written pieces and things and help with hiring. Now, sitting here 6, 7 years later, she's basically our chief operations officer,
Yeah.
and she helps take a lot of the weight off me because I never wanted to. Interesting. A lot of people want to be business owners and run businesses. Even though I grew up in a family where that's all my family ever did, I was looking to be a lawyer. I wanted to be in the courtroom. I wanted to represent clients and all that stuff. And so you're the opposite. You went to law school and then made a major business and run a major business. But I wasn't looking to do that. But long story short, I love running the business and there's so many aspects of it, but I'm not looking to step back and just be,
Totally.
I want to be a lawyer. So she takes a
Well,
lot of that weight off of us.
what is something that like you wish other people asked you about? I'm sure like when you're with friends and they ask about your firm, or they all ask you the same questions. What is something like you don't ever get to talk about as much, where you're like, oh, you know what? If I'm on a podcast with Dave Schnurman, I would want to share this. And maybe
related to this job, or just related to you're talking about related to the job?
It's related to learning, related to growth.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. First, about the why, I will say, because we have the opportunity, like the nice thing about running the law firm is we have junior attorneys who come in, we take summer associates in from law schools. We share this building with Seton Hall Law School, so we really try to integrate ourselves with the law school. We have a very close relationship with Seton Hall. And I like that aspect of it because what you realize is, and I'm sure you realize this, given the hours you put into to your businesses and things like this, which is jobs are hard, right? Your normal job's hard. You wake up, you have a 9 to 5. That's hard. Okay. Just being an adult is hard. Having a job, then taking it to the next level, right? Where you have a job where you're the one you're not just responsible for yourself, right? You're responsible for all your employees, okay? You're responsible for, and it doesn't matter if it's attorneys or not attorneys, right? People don't realize turning on the lights at Lawline every day is not just something you just get to snap your finger and do it, and then turn those lights off when you walk out the door, right? And so that's hard. The part about being a lawyer, and this doesn't matter, just like it happens to be, to Ben Brofman's point, I think particularly heightened in this type of practice. But when you also are responsible in any type of practice for people's, typically, even if they're not being charged with a crime, if somebody's coming to a lawyer and they're paying what they pay, what anyone pays proportionate to the problem, it's because they don't want to do that. This is a horrible situation for them. And so you have to, if you can't bring some empathy or passion to it, depending on how you want to characterize it, and you're not driven by something other than just making money, it's a hard job. It could be a horrific job. And a lot of people say that. Like a lot of people, I have a lot of colleagues and obviously people we went to law school with who are like, being a lawyer is shitty and stuff like that. I will say, and this is where I feel super fortunate, and I try to convey people, because a lot of times when you tell someone you're a lawyer, right, or particularly even a criminal defense attorney, they're like, I think there's a connotation in their mind of that must be awful. And I have been fortunate because I've never felt that for a moment. Like I even when I was in the big firm world, and the hours were horrific, and I was living and breathing in the office, which I knew immediately was not for me. I knew that, and I was representing big companies, and it just wasn't. That's not what I was looking to do. I still loved it. Like I still really loved it. Now, look, I didn't love it at 3:30 in the morning after not being home for 2 days, because I'm a human being and I have other things there are times when I'd like to do other things. But what I try to convey to people is, because people have these connotations in their mind of like being a lawyer, and rightfully it can be tough. It can be a tough job, but I've been fortunate. I've never felt like that. Like I've never, I guess, and I think that's what I tell young attorneys. I'm like, look, you're not going to be successful. Whatever success means to you, it doesn't have to mean economic success. My most successful points in my career were when just so happened to be when I was making the least amount of money. And I had, at least in my own mind, I felt like I had reached somewhat of a peak of professional sort of fulfillment. I was doing things that I had never imagined I would be doing, particularly at that age, but I was making no money. But I didn't think about the money because I was very happy with what I was doing. And so what I tell people, particularly when they're like a year out of law school, is look, you got to figure out really quick, do you really want to do this? If you don't, go do something else, by the way. Like this whole lot, like you did. It's amazing what you were able to do I think it fits you from looking at it from afar really well, but you can't fake it 12 hours a day for the rest of your life. It's impossible. And people won't hire you. They won't use you. They won't use your product, or they won't use your professional services because they'll sniff you out like eventually.
Having the benefit of not only being your freshman, your roommate, but being in the same fraternity with you, I'm going to tell you a secret. You could have been, God forbid, selling rags. You would have been just as happy. You would have been, I'm telling you right now, 'cause
Maybe.
you would never
Yeah.
put yourself in that mindset. You always had that you're always smiling, always had jokes. You just wouldn't be yourself, or you were not a complainer for whatever that mode is. And maybe it's partly how you grew up, but I'm not surprised to hear you say that. But I will tell you that thank God you do have that, because you are there's jobs where you're actually at war, right? And your life is on the line. Then there's jobs where you're saving people's lives. Then there's jobs where you fit in, where you're actually potentially saving somebody's life from a completely different path, whether it's jail time or huge fines. And that's a lot of responsibility. Then you said managing a firm of 25 attorneys and all that responsible with that. And then, of course, it's just the day-to-day of being an adult with kids and all the stresses around that.
Yeah. That last part I haven't figured out yet. I'm still working on that last part.
Remind me, what's the ages of your kids?
18, 15, and 10.
Okay, so
That girl,
18,
boy, girl. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So Josh and Layla, my oldest, are 6 and junior, so we're actually starting to look at colleges. And then Jonah's 11, who thinks he's 16. Because when you have older siblings,
And my youngest is the same way. Yeah.
Let's go off this one for one moment here. You were diagnosed with diabetes, right?
Juvenile diabetes.
Late in life, which sort of caught everyone off guard. And tell me what was that like? How did that affect you? What did you learn from that, from personally, professionally?
It's interesting because it coincided.
How old were you, just to get a sense?
I was 23, I believe. So this is
in good shape.
Oh yeah. So it actually runs in my family. Speaking of all the things it all comes back to genetics. But ultimately, I had just started at Ballard Spahr, and you started a new firm, and literally it's what you could see on a movie, where you're just in that office night and day, and you have a class of people who are starting with you, 50 people, and you're really trying to stand out. And I was all in. I was like living and breathing. I was single at the time, living by myself essentially. So I was just like, this is what I want to do. I'm going to commit myself fully to all of this. And I think within a couple months, I had lost like almost 40 pounds. And everybody was like, and you're working yourself to death and you're going to kill yourself. And I'm like, no, this is what you do, this or that. And then I started literally during the day, like not even at night, just like falling asleep, like sitting at my computer and falling asleep. And then had all the telltale signs. And long story short, because it had run in my family, I probably should have identified it earlier. But long story short, I was super, super sick. I didn't realize it. Was having at the time had untreated juvenile type 1 diabetes. And now this is 22 years ago. No, 25 years ago. So it's vastly different at the time. But back then it was shots all day, insulin shots all day. And it just became another thing on top of the working those hours and all that stuff. But from that point on, and you might remember, because when I moved to New York, which was a couple of years later after that, and obviously I had diabetes at the time, but we went to the gym. I remember we went to the gym together, but I committed myself at that point to prioritize, no matter what's going on, to prioritize my health. And I'm not saying I'm in the best shape of any, I'm not superhuman in any sense. I'm not even Dave Schnurman, but I've never deviated from that, in the sense of no matter what I have going on, I make sure that I eat the best I can. I go to the gym, and it's not even just so much the physical, but there's a corresponding benefit to just intellectually. Like you go to the gym in the morning, I have 4 hours of acute diet, like more so than I do. And there's just so many benefits. And it's funny because we're talking about our kids, and my son's 15 now, and I see it. He's like going to the gym. Every time I go to the gym, he's going to the gym. He'll go to the gym without me. And I really try to encourage it, not because 15-year-olds think they want to be like big and strong and aesthetically look good, but I just think there's so many benefits to that. But I don't know that I would have been dialed in like that. I certainly wasn't in college in that sense, to that degree, but I have tried to maintain that throughout my professional career, because I do think that there's a corresponding benefit to the professional work too.
That's fascinating. Just out of curiosity, how has the technology changed, or has your health changed that you don't need to do like
Oh,
shots that you used to?
it's a world different. So now there's been an evolution over the last 20 some odd years. At the time, you went from having to prick your fingers literally 10 times a day, take your blood sugar, figure out how
Yeah.
much insulin, calculate how much insulin you were going to take, give yourself a needle. You would always have to like, excuse yourself before a
Yeah.
meal to go give it. And I was very embarrassed about it too,
Yeah.
particularly as an adult. You're like,
Yeah.
and you would see the needles, and it was just, and it was imprecise, frankly, the whole thing. And to now, there's glucose monitoring systems. I got one on my
A
arm
patch.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, that communicates directly with an insulin pump. Now they literally communicate with each other. That's within the last couple of years. And so it largely, it manages itself way more. You still have to do stuff, but the technology is worlds better than it was at the time.
Type 1 diabetes, there's no way you can out health it. You can't get in
Can't
bed.
out health it. Nothing you can do. You have zero insulin secreting capacity.
That's fascinating.
So if you don't,
I assume they're working very hard to try to figure out. I guess not, because you still need a pill. But that's fascinating that you can't get in the best shape ever.
nothing you
it
can
just
do.
restarts.
Yeah. Yes, if you think about
You have
it,
like 10 packs extra at home just in case there's a shortage.
yeah, but there's always is. My family jokes like every time I'm on vacation, somehow I end up breaking something. Like I literally end up breaking something. And you're a big traveler, right? So it's not easy. When you're in America, you can get anything. If I'm in Miami and something breaks, like I can get something to my. But when you're overseas somewhere, you forget that everywhere is not America. You don't have access to. For all the criticism of our healthcare system, like at least we do have access to things.
Meaning, is it the type of thing if you didn't have access, after a certain amount of days, you have to be in the hospital?
Yeah. You can't, there's no such thing as, you need constant insulin to be delivered, okay, to you, either through an insulin pump or through a shot or something. So eventually your blood sugar will rise to a level where you're going to ketoacidosis and you could kill yourself. Literally. It happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So so you mentioned travel. Is there things where you're like not worth the risk because of that you wouldn't?
No, not really. I'm not a huge, I know, and this is particularly when we get to our age, everyone, certainly in my universe, seems like they are, and I get it, prioritizing travel and experiences and going places and seeing things. And I do like those things. I do. But I don't have that same affinity for it that I think.
The wanderlust.
I don't. And I think because there's a comfort for me and a security for me to be in my universe. And that's really two things. One is no question the health. It's easier for me to just stick to my regimen and my routine. And then two is I don't think I have had an uninterrupted day of vacation since I started this career. And it's one of the big
career. Got it.
Correct. Yeah. My phone does it, and it's
Also,
I wish I could. I wish I could. Yeah.
I'll say something else Ben Brofman told me in the same conversation. I asked him if he's going to retire anytime soon. This was a decade ago and he's still practicing. And he said he's exhausted, but he's like imagine a treadmill, and he's on a treadmill and he's at the height of his career and getting the most that he is. And he's exhausted and he's on the treadmill, but he can't stop because, and his partner at the time was Mark Dagnifalo.
I know Mark.
Who did
I was with him last week. I was with him last week in court. Yeah.
Yeah. Now he's obviously dealing with,
and he's crushing it. He's with a couple friends of mine. He's doing really well. Yeah.
He's always a superstar back in the days. But like that, he had said that he was exhausted, but he cannot stop to some degree. And I was curious, do you feel, what is the exit strategy? I mean, we're young, so we're not 70s.
Yeah.
But like my dad was not like where you're at, but he was a personal injury attorney, and he had to retire doing that because when he stopped trying cases because it was so emotionally exhausting. And similar to what you said, I can
and physically exhausting.
Physically exhausting. Like I didn't see him. Yeah, but he wasn't dealing with people's potential jail sentences. It was but what his why was is, and I think why he always loved being a lawyer. He felt like he was Robin Hood, where he was getting from rich insurance companies, and most of his clients were poor. And he was giving it to his poor clients, and that's what drove him. But it's easier to stop as a personal injury attorney because you just move on to the next case. But so, I'm just curious.
Yeah, I haven't thought. It's interesting. So one thing I have thought, I don't foresee myself ever retiring. I don't have it in my. I start to get anxious even like to your point, even on vacation, even if I have a lull, and this is unfortunately, it's like being a Pavlov dog a little bit, right? You become a product of your environment that you live in every single day. My environment is very constant action, if you will, at least in my universe. There's always something going on. There's always a phone call. There's always some crisis of the moment that I'm dealing with. And it's hard to detach from that. Okay. But also, I will admit that you do become addicted to it in some way, right? Like you do become, and it goes back to what I'm saying, particularly if you enjoy what you're doing. I think I will always do something. Okay. Now, I don't know that I will always run a 25-person law firm in New York and New Jersey doing government and regulatory defense work for any number of reasons. And the one thing that I've tried not to do in my career is say, this is what I'm going to be doing 5 years or 10 years from now. I don't know. I don't think it's very likely that I'm going to be living in Boca Raton and at the age of 65 and retiring as much as, and I've had this conversation with my brother. My brother retired a couple of years ago. Okay.
I did not know that.
Yeah. He crushed life, literally
For him.
crushed life. And in the world of private equity and all that stuff, he sold his companies, he liquidated a lot of commercial real estate, and he's done basically. And he's 49 years old. And I talk to him like almost certainly a couple times a week. And I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And trust me, he's enjoying himself. And it hasn't been that long, but I can't fathom what the hell I would do every day.
I suspect he'll be back at it sooner than later.
I think he will too, because he has a little bit of similar sort of attributes. But
at 49, you're figuring, I totally get that. That's interesting.
But to your point, lawyers it's a weird profession. Like a lot of, especially where I live, which is right outside New York City, most of the people in finance by me, right? And finance people tend to they peak in their 30s, in their early 40s. And there's very few people on Wall Street for the most part, or at hedge funds or PE funds or whatever, that are like in their mid 60s or upper 70s. Now, maybe that's because they just make a bunch of money and they go and do something else. But I actually think it's more than that. I just think the nature of the industry is such that for whatever reason, the longevity is not there in those jobs. Where lawyers, like to your point, Ben Brockman's at his peak. Guys here in New Jersey, I was just with Larry Lussberg, who's trying a case with Mark Agnifilo. Larry Lussberg is probably one of the most renowned, if not the most renowned criminal defense attorneys in New Jersey, right? And guys like Mike Critchley, who's also in the same thing. And these guys are, I don't want to speculate at their age, but they are of the era of Ben. And they are the go-to guys. They've worked and have created, rightfully, a reputation where when the major cases hit and the stakes are the highest, those are the people who are getting called. I'm 47. I'm potentially 20, 25 years from that. And so I understand why it's difficult. I don't think these guys I don't want to count other people's money. I don't do it. But I don't think Ben Brockman needs to work anymore like he does. I think he would be okay. But it is how you become to define yourself. And it's hard. It's an all or nothing proposition. It's hard to be like, I'm going to be part-time now as one of the most renowned criminal defense attorneys, because if you have a trial, there's no such thing as part-time. You're just in it. Do
you have totally? And first off, let me just, because I know I can talk to you for hours. How much time do you have?
I got whatever you need. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The sun's setting here in beautiful Newark.
Yeah. Park Avenue.
I defer to you though. You're the editor.
No, I'm good. No, I can keep going. I just want to make sure.
My first podcast. It's my first podcast.
I realized when I try to find them on you. After this, the calls are going to be coming in. But just changing topic for a second. Do you read self-help books? Do you read business books? Have you in the past? Is there any? I have a few books over here that have been like my game changer books. Do you have any that are like have transformed your?
So I love nonfiction. Okay, I love historical fiction. Nonfiction. And I don't.
Topics?
Usually U.S. history.
Anything in particular that comes to mind that you really like?
No, all the standard, usually from a certain era, so not recent stuff. I don't care to read about the last, but normally 50 years and older. But when we opened up the firm, which is a different story, and I know it's a little off topic, I will say, and I'll give a shout out there's a lot of nerves. At the time, I had been in government I was at a big firm. I was making a lot of money proportionate to my age and what my needs were at the time in the capacity, particularly in New York City. I didn't have any kids and my wife was working and we were flush. And then started having kids. My wife stepped back, and at the same time, I decided to take what was probably an 85% pay cut, okay, to go to work in the federal government.
That is unbelievable.
And my wife was amazing about it. Never for a second was there like,
Can we start calling her Tamar, your wife's name?
We can, but I don't know that you listen.
I just can't.
So Tamar was amazing. And she never once, and there's no discussion ever about, hey, we just went from being like, look, New York City, you're never off unless you're like a billionaire. But we were living comfortable. We had an apartment, blah, blah, blah. Went from doing that to essentially barely getting by. And I'm not crying because we made that decision, but I did that for the better over 5 years. In the interim, I had 3 kids, essentially. So it becomes even tougher as having 3 kids. And so finally came where, for any number of reasons, I had to leave government, largely economic. Okay. And after all of that, I started going back and interviewing with the big firms. At that point, I had a lot of connections, and to go back basically exactly where I left. And through that process, and obviously in conjunction with my partner going through the same process, because he was actually my boss. He was the first assistant AG at the time in New Jersey. So I worked for him, and we got to talking literally over lunch in Newark. And he was like, what are your opportunities? What are you thinking? This or that. And I'm like, I'm going to go to Joe Schmo firm in the city. What are you thinking? I'm going to go to this Joe Schmo firm in the city. And I literally said to him, I was like, are you excited about that? And he's miserable, but I got to do it. And then I'm like, yeah, me neither. It's miserable. And I'm like, and that's how we got to talking, right, about going out on our own. But I remember when we made the decision, we're like, I think we could do this. And I could give you that analysis. We turned out to have no clue what we were really like, but it turned out fine. And I went home to Tamar and I said, I know I told you this was all towards an end, that I was going to go crush it and make all this money, but instead I need to borrow 50 grand. Like I need to find a way to borrow 50 grand to open up this law firm with Tom, right? Like she didn't, like barely knew him. But again, it was more about what I wanted to do, right? Like with a vision towards what I wanted to do than it was even like how I'm going to do it or what the net result of it is going to be. And I think there's something to be said for that, right? Because particularly this day and age, and I see it particularly with the generation younger, everything is about what they want. It's not about the process. And if you can't embrace the process, look, not to say you can't have great success, you can have great success. I just don't think it's as rewarding, and it might not be what you want either in the end of the day.
Wow. All right. Dropping bombs.
I'm just saying, I was going
to ask you, because I skipped over it. I'm sure it's just like a whatever story. And like you made, it was another decision tree, and you're just like, not only were you leaving a job, then you were leaving a job without a guaranteed pay.
Nothing.
How long did it take for it to become a quote unquote success?
So we had a problem too. The problem is a lot of times when people go start up their own firms, you mentioned like Mark Ignivolo. So Mark was worked in the same U.S. attorney's office that I worked in before me. But Mark had created himself a great reputation, obviously working with Ben, and people knew him, and he had his own clients. When you're in government, the detriment is you have no clients, right? You have no business. You don't even know how to run a business, but that's a different problem so we literally couldn't even solicit a single client, anyone, until the day we walked out of government. And so you're really starting from the start line. And I will say, like those first couple months after you've rented an office space, and we were trying to look the part. We were trying to get, because you have to a little bit. And those first couple months when you're like, there's 2 of us sitting in an empty office space, literally, and just looking at each other. And
can you go finish?
It was not, but I will say, and it goes back to finish on your point. You said about self-help stuff. I will tell you this, and I don't remember how I found him at the time. But there's a guy out there named Gary Vaynerchuk. Do you know who Gary Vaynerchuk is? You probably do. Okay. So in any event, I think I found him on social media. I don't know how I found him. I got so enthralled by these videos that he puts out. And essentially the upshot of the video is, it doesn't matter what your age is, right? It doesn't matter. Everyone thinks they're too old or too young, or essentially, I'm probably not doing them a disservice because they're actually super insightful. For those months when we were sitting in this office, and I was literally like, couldn't tell my wife that I had no business, I was making no money, I didn't know what the hell we were doing. Honestly, I spent a lot of time watching those things, and to say they're encouraging in that particularly at that point in my life, they were really, I needed someone to tell me like, you're not out of your fucking mind.
I love that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know Gary very well. I actually interviewed him.
Did you?
I'll send that to you. But
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
what he says in his videos and is he hopes that you stop watching him. He hopes that you don't need him anymore.
Yep.
Because if you watch, because ultimately he's saying the same thing over and over again, which is great. And eventually, if you don't watch him anymore, it means you don't need to hear it.
And it's funny that you say that because I follow him on social media. I'm not on that. I don't do that much on social media, as you can attest to. But he went into business with a good friend of mine who lives in my town, who's a chef, and they started a restaurant company together. Vaynerchuk started a restaurant shop. It's called VCR Group, and they're doing amazing things. They have amazing places. But when I saw that, he popped back up, and through the association, it's funny you say that because it's been 10 years. That first year, I will tell you, I can't even tell you how many hours of his videos I watched, hours upon hours. And I haven't watched him for 10 years, probably since then. Yeah.
I think 10 years ago, I was obviously probably he was doing a lot more then. He had that show, I don't know, where he was following him around every day. And he did it. I actually created a show like that for Entrepreneurs Organization, and it followed me around through this conference.
That's awesome.
Because I was like, I'm going to send you a clip just so you can see if it reminds you of that. And so he was really watching his videos was super helpful for me too, because he just cuts through it and speaks what you need to hear. And
he's an amazing communicator too. Like his ability to convey that is,
and he gets a lot of heat from people who just they just look at the wrong things, or people who are not listening to the message or not entrepreneurs or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So that's great to hear.
But in any event, so I give it that's the only that's the only one real one I can vividly remember over the time.
Are you still learning new things?
Oh yeah. That's the thing about all the time. I will tell you,
substantively or soft skills wise or leadership wise or a little bit of everything.
Both. From the leadership, I had the benefit, and you referenced it earlier, when I was in New Jersey state government, when I was at the AG's office, I guess that's 11, 12 years ago. So I was like in my mid 30s, and I had the honor, like I knew Christie from my time at the U.S. Attorney's Office, and then obviously he got elected to be the governor, and he wasn't like a politico at the time. I know people think of him now as like a real politician, but at the time he was the federal prosecutor in New Jersey. He was a lawyer, right, overseeing the U.S. Attorney's Office. So when he got elected governor, he plucked a bunch of us, just lawyers, to lead state agencies. And another amazing sort of leader. And I know it's funny how politics, everyone gets an image of one, but I can tell you firsthand from a leadership perspective, like an amazing leader and somebody who just like you wanted to throw yourself in front of a train for, even if I wasn't close with him personally, but he put me in a position where I had hundreds of employees, right, overseeing almost basically every regulated profession in the state of New Jersey. I was like a kid, right? I was like 35 years old. And what I didn't realize, and I felt pretty confident, like from a subject matter perspective, that I could oversee and do that. What I didn't realize is, because I had never done it in my life, is to be the head of an agency like that and to have hundreds of employees. Like the leadership thing is not something that's like just naturally or intuitively you're good at or you figure it out. And that was a real learning curve for me, because even being the smartest guy in the room, and I certainly never professed to be the smartest guy in the room, but
clearly Hal is.
Yeah, clearly, obviously he's proven that. He's certainly the favorite son at this point. But you have to you have to learn leadership skills. And I didn't have those. I can admit now, I've learned my own style over time.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's not easy. It's not easy to be the guy who everyone's looking at. People think it is, but it's not.
It's funny because you say so young. You didn't realize you were young in your mid 30s until you're 47. No, you're like, oh,
that's right.
I was young.
It's so true.
But like when you're in your mid 30s, like the world is your oyster. Now, as we're closer to 50 than we are to 40, you're realizing, oh no, the world isn't your oyster. What seems endless. Okay, I see now a 20 to 25 year career. What does that look like? And am I in the good place, or am I going to hit a midlife rut, a midlife crisis, or somewhere in between? Or am I just feeling stale? And it seems like you have enough going on that none of that, like there's stress and there's all those different things happening. And I'm sure there's certain things in your life, just like all of us, you're like, if I have to do this one thing one more time or whatever that is, and what I do,
everybody has that.
Yeah, I moved to Spain. That's how I dealt with it.
Yeah.
But you have fish, right? You still go to fish?
Not as often as I used to. Not as I
Not as
will
often
admit,
as Ari.
not nowhere near as Ari. I'm
Ari, if
good.
you made it this far in the podcast, let me know. I'll be impressed.
Gotta give him a
Uh,
shout out. Yeah,
yeah.
no, there's certain things.
Ari is
Yeah.
my junior year roommate.
Yep.
Eric is my freshman year roommate.
Oh my
I don't know,
God.
man. I think there's a couple. I would just say, and I would say this, the other thing, you've always been good. Obviously, we didn't keep in touch from a conversational standpoint or hanging out, and never too late. Would love to get together, but I know
For sure.
you have some close friends from school still, and I'm sure you've always kept strong relationships. And as we get older, like you realize, I know you're joking about Boca. My dad said that too. He's 79 and in Boca right now.
Yeah.
And
So my dad too, by the way. I'm
yeah,
not. By the way, it looks pretty good sitting out in a gray Newark, New Jersey day.
it's just it's your community and your relationships. And if without your family and your community and everything else, it's a tough life.
Yeah.
And my mom just passed away in May, and that's my
Oh
dad's been
man, I'm
dealing.
sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I don't know if I
yeah.
knew
So
that.
yeah, it was unexpected. She went to the
Holy
hospital.
smokes.
Yeah, she died 26 days later, 76 years old, and got this picture of her
Yeah.
right here from when I think it was in high school.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I remember her. Yeah, I'm sure. I remember your dad vividly. Maybe that's
Yeah.
because he was out there on TV and stuff like that. I
Yeah.
can visualize your dad for sure. But I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, thank you.
But it
No,
does.
it's just
Yeah.
there's something there, and in a way, she's with me now every day. But 'cause I'm
Yeah.
thinking about her and trying to talk about her and trying to make her proud. But
Yeah.
on the other side, I'm in complete denial that it's actually real, because how could that happen? But my point is, my dad has a community in Boca who every day there's something for him, and they're taking care of him, and they're all calm.
Yeah.
And again, he would, even 5 years ago, he'd be like, shoot me if I end up in Boca playing canasta. And
Yeah. No, look, I'm
life
not,
changes.
again, it's not by way of judging. And
Get it.
it is.
Things change.
And look, it's very easy to say that, to your point. Call me in 20 years and
Yeah.
hopefully we'll talk in the interim. But I just, to the point that I said earlier, I don't think for a second I'm still going to be like sitting here
Right.
in this
Right.
office. But what I've learned is you can manifest things. You truly can. And I don't mean that just, hey, in your mind, you want to do something, and nothing happens like that. Shit takes work, and sometimes it doesn't work out. But I have ideas of things that I would want to do, related and unrelated to what I'm doing right now. And I think you can do that. Yeah.
It's funny to hear you say that, because I think you also said earlier in the interview, you don't try to plan 5 years ahead. You just go through that. But
yeah,
you do, because to some degree,
Yeah.
I found if you put it in writing, it
yeah,
becomes, and you really think about it and you focus on it. I've seen it like in myself, and where I struggle a little bit. I knew 20 years ago where I wanted to be today,
Yeah.
and I'm exactly where I wanted to be. I cannot yet in this moment drive a clear picture of where I want to be 20 years from today.
Yeah.
And that excites me and worries me, because I know 20 years can go by pretty quickly. And
This is a testament to that. Yeah.
I don't think it's right. I don't think it's enough to say, I want more money, bigger things, more things. I knew it was a weird thing. I knew, and sounds small, but I knew I wanted to buy a townhouse in the neighborhood I grew up, send my kids to the school I went to, and I wanted to travel and be really good there for my kids. And I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I wanted to have an impact, and I wanted to do lifelong learning. I didn't know exactly it would.
Honestly.
Totally. And so now, everything that I have today all started in 2006 when I started the public access TV show called True NYC. I don't know if you remember.
I remember that. It was
essentially the first podcast, right? Because it was before podcasts were a thing. It led to Lawline, because I hired a company that I ended up interviewing. It led to me joining Entrepreneurs Organization. It led me living in Barcelona and all these different things.
I get the comment a lot from people in my universe, and you probably do too, because you elude similar energies. But everyone's like, where do you get all this energy? You have so much energy, like always. And I don't feel like I have a lot of energy.
Yeah.
It's just I do sometimes, like when you're doing things that you're not so energetic about. It is a great barometer of, are you on the right track? Not can you mapping out your whole life. It's very hard to do that. I certainly I've never been able to do that other than at a high level conceptually, like things. I have ideas and things of that but if I know if the energy's there, I'm on the right tracks. And like you have a lot of, for this, you're right.
I
You
have
don't know where it's gonna
energy,
lead.
but I also have doubts, right? About
Everyone has doubts, though, you know?
totally.
Yeah.
Everyone has doubts, and it's managing the doubts versus the energy. And I've also, in a good way, I I don't. I've created a structure on purpose where I didn't want to be necessarily in your position where I had to practice to
Yeah.
make more money. I set up a structure where actually I don't need to be involved as much in the day to day, where I can be focused on the next big thing. And to some degree, it leads to what is Dave working on now? Oh, let's just put him in the podcast.
Right,
So he
right,
doesn't break
right.
anything. And I'm like, great, I'll do that.
And I'm envious of that because that's a real, I struggle with, to your point about doubts. My biggest concern is because of the demands of not just running a business, because you can run a business. I don't want to say like on an absentee basis. It's not that. That's too extreme. But you can diversify as your interests and put people in place to run a business. This is a weird business. Law is a weird business where it's very hard to do that. It's your clients feel it if you're not fully committed. The people you work for feel it if you're not committed, and who work for you or you work for, whatever the case may be. And so I struggle because it doesn't leave a whole lot of time, and time is my biggest problem in life. Okay, and if you ask Tamar, time is something I fear, right? Devoting, and the worst thing about being a lawyer, perhaps you want to talk about horrible things, is having to account for your time. And I don't mean economically. I just mean meaning I don't. Fortunately, I'm at the point like where I don't look at my work like that. I have to bill more time to make more money. I'm past that point. I'm okay with where things lie. But it's the struggle of time utilization. And if you're not, you need, in order to pursue new endeavors, in order to think about things, and frankly, even just to be a lawyer, there's times when I would like to spend an entire day just trying to intellectually figure out what the best way to do something is, and there's a constant pressure on me, at least. I can't speak to other people, of time. It's like literally looming over everything that I do, even on my personal life, which is not great. That is a true, and I think some of that's unique to lawyers. Some of it is everyone suffers from, but certainly I think a lot of that is because of the way the structure of law in America in particular has created,
for sure,
the correlation between practice of law and time is not great. I threw you off on a tangent there.
No, I'm gonna be nice. I'm gonna be nice to you, and I'm gonna end this because
all right,
I want to continue conversations like this with you and in general, and we'll figure something out. Not that you have the time to do it, but I also I really appreciate this conversation, and you should think about doing more podcasts or just putting it out there, because I think your kids would love to. If they watch this, which my kids will never watch anything I do or read my book, but at some point maybe.
I got to read the book, by the way.
Yeah.
I got to read the book.
You will appreciate it. I will.
I feel like I should get a free copy of the book.
I'll send you a copy.
Signed and everything.
Right here. This copy's yours. This copy's yours.
That's awesome.
I'm actually working on a second book, and it's funny because the whole concept of the second book, a big component of it is having agency over your time, and how that's been one of the
I could use that
focus.
book.
So we'll leave it there. Thanks, Eric, for joining me. And I know if you've gotten this far, you have gotten a tremendous amount of experience from Eric in this podcast.